Yeah, whatever.
All right. Well, welcome back, everybody, to Locked Off Logic podcast. This week, we brought visual aids. As those of you guys that are watching on YouTube can see, Sam brought a visual aid this week, which has been on his coffee table for how long?
A month or two.
Okay.
It's the art of Arcane. We're not sponsored by this, but it would be awesome. But anyways, it's incredible.
So we have visual aids this week, just in case we get really into the conversation to talk about Arcane. That's our topic this week is Arcane League of Legends on Netflix, which the series finale just aired late last year, 2024. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But Sam, to lead us off, speaking of TV shows, what is your most anticipated TV show of 2025 at this point? Do you have one?
My most Sorry, I was just like, I'm looking at this and going,
this is a cool book.
Dude, I love Arcane.
Yes.
And I wish I could have watched it again before.
The art style in Arcane is so beautiful. Like the animation behind it. Not just like the story and the characters, but just like how, especially like I just got done watching Invincible. And you watch Invincible,
So good.
and then you watch Arcane. Like the art style between Arcane is just so much more engaging.
It's so distinct.
And easy to look at.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
This is something we have to see. What is this?
It's the letter V wrote.
Oh yeah, we have to read this. See, this is good. We have props this week, and Sam, you let us know when you want to read that letter, and all kinds of good shit in this book.
Yeah, but before Arcane, my most anticipated TV show for this year?
For this year, I know that some will be announced maybe later in the year that might air later in the year, but the ones that you're aware of that have release dates this year, which one are you most looking forward to?
That's interesting. I don't know that I've thought about that, actually.
That's why I asked it.
So last weekend, I finished Silo Season 2. I've been waiting that for a long time, and that just came out.
Good?
Yeah, I really, really liked it.
Silo thumbs up.
I mean, Rebecca Ferguson is just one of my favorites. She's good at everything. Her character this season is different than her character last season, though. It seems a little interesting. It seems like a different character, and I'm still chewing on that. But I've really enjoyed season 2, and I've just enjoyed the world of the Silo. It's been kind of interesting to play in. But then the season finale was also the season premiere of Severance Season 2, which I haven't started yet. So I am very excited about that. Looking forward to that quite a bit. Obviously I'm very excited about The Last of Us Season 2. That one it'll be interesting to see because what timeline to tackle. I mean, you take season 1 and it's about a 10 to 11, an 8 to 12 hour playthrough of the game, right? So they broke it up into, I think, 8 episodes, more or less an hour apiece. So generally around the same timeline, from start to finish. The Last of Us Part 2, the game,
It's at least double.
it's 36 hours, playthrough.
And a couple, it's not timelines, but it's a couple different, you bounce around when it comes to...
It's a few different points of view.
Mm-hmm.
And which will be polarizing for some if they know nothing about it yet.
Which in a few weeks, before last season 2 has release date in April, one of my buddies who has an amazing story, we're going to have him on the podcast at a separate date about his story, but he'll be joining us because he just finished playing The Last of Us Part 2 for the first time, going into the game knowing nothing about what happens. And so before it releases, we'll talk with him and put it out because talking with him, it just brought back those feelings of because Sam and I were texting while we were playing the game simultaneously, and Sam I think had me by about 5 hours, and then no matter how hard I tried to catch up to him, I just couldn't. But I would send him emojis based on like what I was experiencing, and he knew exactly where I was.
Oh yeah, man, and that came out in 2020, which was pretty. It was interesting in the timeline because it is a game about survival in an outbreak, right? And then it was released in 2020, part 2, and that was when COVID happened. So it was kind of interesting playing a game about this outbreak that has kind of wiped out the world, and then not really knowing what COVID was or what it was or how far-reaching it was. It was an interesting time to play that, but the stories within The Last of Us and the character point of views. So I am excited to see how they tackle that. And the trailers have looked pretty good.
Yes.
They've looked pretty good. I'm still torn. I'm still torn about Kaylee. Now I'm forgetting her last name.
Caitlin Dever, is Abby?
No. Let me preface this with this. I think Bella Ramsey does an excellent job.
I agree.
Like, in terms of emotional character depth and conveying the range of the emotion of Ellie, I think absolutely great job, great casting, great performance. Kaylee, who was in Civil War and Alien Romulus, there's just been back and forth online of, oh, she should have been Ellie. And we talked about this a little bit, I think, in one of the other podcasts where the director was playing The Last of Us Part 2 when he was writing the script for Alien Romulus. So he injected like a bunch of the things from Last of Us into Alien Romulus. And you see Kaylee in her role as the lead in Alien Romulus. And it is like frames that are replicated from The Last of Us. And it's like, that just looks and feels like Ellie, right? So my mind's always imagining a world where, what if she was cast as Ellie? Because, I don't know, there is something about the look of a character, and she almost looks identical, right? And again, Bella's performance, phenomenal. But she doesn't have the look that Kaylee has in terms of how close does this character look like. And having spent so much time with Ellie, I already have like an image of Ellie. And it just was a very different image that they cast. Anyways, I know that's polarizing. I'm very excited about season 2. And the performances are going to be pretty great. So...
Yeah, and I know that
don't mind me
with,
popping my can.
please do it right next to Mike.
ASMR. Aw.
Yes. I think that HBO. Yeah, I agree with it. Bella does not have the look down, but I think very few very few characters in that show do have the look exactly down. Like I actually think that Hugh Jackman and Daphne Keane are probably a more accurate representation of Joel and Ellie than Pedro and Bella.
Yeah.
But obviously you just can't bring them like, well, you guys were great in Logo. Let's put you, I guess you could have, but even like I think Caitlin Dever, who I watched her, kind of grow up on screen with The Last Man Standing and Tim Allen. She was amazing and unbelievable on Netflix. One of my favorite Netflix series. She's not 210 pounds, just pure muscle. But I know she's going to kill that role because she has killed every single role I've ever seen her in. And I think that's probably what they're going for more than the exact look is like who can inject, like with the Ellie, like the caring and the fierceness into the same person. The Pedro or the Joel, the protective and the ornery. I think they did great with season 1. I'm interested to see how they'll do season 2. I think it has to be 2 seasons, I would think. Like season 2 part 1, season 2 part 2.
It only makes sense.
Because the story is just so, and I'm actually, and this might be even more polarizing than than what you said is I actually prefer The Last of Us Part 2 than The Last of Us Part 1. I love Part 1. I think Part 1 is a 10 out of 10.
I'm the same.
And I think Last of Us 2 is 10 out of 10. Like, you just, like, the story did not go the way that I thought it was. It's beautiful. It's brutal. It's so human. It's heartbreaking. It's just so many different things. And it's The Last of Us, just more of it.
A lot more of it.
Yeah.
Grittier, more vengeful, but at the same time, like, more emotional, more empathetic. And I think that's what people didn't like.
Yeah, they wanted
It was forcing you to be empathetic to something you wanted nothing to be empathetic towards. And then, if you had a heart, I think you felt that.
Yeah.
Not to say that people that didn't feel that don't have hearts, but it is a little concerning.
Yeah.
To not be able to separate yourself from that and not walk someone's shoes for a mile and see their point of view. If you haven't, you have no idea what we're talking about if you haven't played the game, and I don't want to spoil it.
Come back in a few weeks.
We'll
talk about it. But even like the boss fight at the end, like so the boss fight in The Last of Us 2, like no spoilers here until a few weeks, but you go through this camp and you get to the beach where you have this final boss fight. And it's not the most complex boss fight in the world. But as I replayed it,
even calling it a boss fight doesn't seem
but it is essentially the final boss. It's technically the final boss. And you think of like all these video games that you've played over the years, like so my favorite video game of last year was Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom, which is one of the most epic final fights in the history of gaming. You fall into the earth, you fall down like 3 miles, you fight this army. And then you go and you fight Ganondorf, the main boss. You fight him in a one-on-one sword fight. You have to beat him once, then he gets powered up, repowered, you fight him again, and then he eats this rock and he turns into a dragon, where you fight this dragon as a human around the skies of Hyrule for 2 hours. Like, that is an epic boss fight, just on scale alone.
Yeah.
That boss fight, I think, in comparison to the final fight in The Last of Us 2, like, epic in scale, no, but epic in emotion, times 1,000. Times 1,000. Like, you are just, these two people, their moments have been leading here, and you almost don't want it to happen, but it has to happen, and you have to do it, and there's no backing out of it. And it's just...
It's all internal.
Yes. And the environment, it's dark, it's wet, it's bloody, it's gritty, it's emotional. It's just, it's a final fight. The soundtrack is amazing. It's a final fight that you kind of want to have, but at the same time you don't want to have, and that's what makes it so, I think, so good.
Yeah, it's like the hero's journey. It's the dark night of the soul.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It is fucking dark night.
Yeah.
Man, how they pull this off?
Good luck.
It's gonna be.
Good luck, Neil Druckmann.
It's gonna be divisive.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be divisive.
Because I know people like Jake Bevins. I gave him a shout out last time on the podcast with Walter Mitty and my cousins. And all the other people, like, they're not video game people. And so they know The Last of Us by the game. Or not by the game, by the TV show. And I just don't think they know what's coming.
No.
And I don't think they're going to know how to react to it. Just like I think any of us did. When that happened and it continued to happen, and then it reversed course and you're in a new spot, you just gotta put one foot in front of the other and see where this path goes.
And I'm also curious on the decision of, will it be episode 1 or episode 2?
It's got to happen end of episode 1 or the start of episode 2. It's got to. Like in the trailers, they just announced, I think it's going to be 7 episodes long. And so
there's no way that could cover that game.
And the part that I saw that's the latest part that they cover, I think, is in the graveyard with Abby, which is not even halfway through the game at that point. And that's the latest point that I saw.
I don't remember that part.
Yeah, it's got to happen at the end of episode 1 or the start of episode 2. I would assume end of episode 1. Like, give us like another, like you did episode, like in the Last of Us season 2 years ago, where you gave us an hour and a half episode to start the season. Give us another hour and a half.
It's absolutely going to be in episode 1.
Yeah, it has to be.
For story reasons, but there's no way the studio is going to say the season premiere. Let's not cover that.
Yeah.
I mean, that will have you hooked for the rest of the season.
But even then, like, okay, so here's the question. Like, they could, in theory, do it in the middle of the season if they go in, like, a more of, like, a linear path where they start out with Ellie's birthday at the Dinosaur Museum, which is, I think, the earliest point that you see in The Last of Us Part 2, and you kind of work your way up to what events eventually leads up to this moment. But there's the museum, there's when she goes back to Salt Lake City, there's the night, like there's things, if they go like a more linear direction.
Interesting.
In theory, it could be like maybe like episode 3, episode 4, because there is a scene where Joel's on the porch and Ellie approaches him. That's in the trailer, and that moment doesn't happen until the very end of The Last of Us Part 2 because it's a flashback. So I don't know what they're gonna do. But in HBO we trust, right?
HBO we trust.
Yeah.
Honestly, the 2 streaming services that I just am like bangers after bangers, like really good, is HBO and Apple TV. So, but not like there's not bangers on other ones. I mean, Arcane, which we'll talk about later, Netflix, and etc. So maybe Last of Us 2 is my. I'm like, I don't even know what's coming out this year in television. I should know, but that's like it. That's all I can think of.
Okay.
So
I think I'm in the same boat. I think mine is definitely. I think, and I really don't like. I don't really care what else comes out. Last of Us season 2 on HBO, but also Daredevil: Born Again.
You sent me that trailer.
Yeah.
Oh. I thought about you today. You're gonna love this. It has to do with
Daredevil.
No, the Punisher.
Oh, okay. Read it.
Who knows if this is true or not, but I liked it, so I hope that it's true. But it's John Berthnall. Is that how you pronounce it?
I say Berthal.
Berthnall.
But we could be wrong.
Berthnall. I think it's Berthnall.
Berthnall.
Anyways, he plays the Punisher.
Frank Castle is his real name.
But apparently this is a quote, according to online, of his. We'll let him decide if it's
TikTok
true or
exclusive.
not. When I was announced as the new Punisher, I was very excited. So much so that I went straight to a comic book store to buy all the comics of the character I could find. While at the counter, the store employee noticed my purchase, looked at me closely, and decisively said, "I know who you are, and you're not taking these." Without warning, he started going through the comics I had chosen, separating some and selecting others. In the end, he handed me the stack he deemed appropriate, looked at me intently, and with a seriousness I'll never forget added, "Don't mess this up."
And he didn't. That's the cool thing about this. I think this actually happened. First off,
And that was his first experience as the Punisher.
So John, like, he's since like kind of come up in the acting world where he's been in The Bear. He's been in. It's one of my favorite movies, but I always forget the title of it. The one with the car and Christian Bale. What's that one with the Punisher?
Ford and Ferrari?
Yes,
Ford versus Ferrari.
Yeah. I've seen him in a lot of things. I think his performance as Frank Castle is the best performance that he gives. For the effort that he put in to study the Punisher, the time he spent with war veterans, understanding like their point of view when they're in combat, when they're in episodes of PTSD, and how he portrays that on screen, I feel is so honoring to them. And I just can't get enough Punisher content. Like, Daredevil season 2 is when Punisher comes in. He gets his own TV series for 2 seasons. And then when the rights went back to Marvel, they just announced a new Punisher season. And that's why I think you got to watch it. So we can talk about it here, because I think I love Daredevil for a lot of different reasons. One is I think he's one of those heroes that you can relate with, where He's a really good guy with a lot of different flaws. Very Catholic, very, very in love with the idea of justice, but just goes through, just human struggles. And he's blind. And what kind of Catholic dresses up as the devil and beats up criminals? And that's pretty badass. And then Frank, like his relationship with Frank Castle, John, and just the performance that he puts on, the intensity, the kindness, the action sequences. It's just, I think you gotta watch it, and I think it's John's best performance.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I mean, that might have sold.
All right.
And honestly, The Punisher is like right up my alley. Like the whole seeking justice and redemption stories. I don't know why I'm drawn to that, but I am so much.
Oh, you're gonna love Daredevil.
So
There's a conversation. This is in like the TikTok sphere. Will tell you about this conversation where there's a conversation between Daredevil and the Punisher on a roof, where Punisher is just like it's Daredevil season 2. So when you get there, you'll notice when he comes in, and Punisher is just putting a bunch of bullets in everybody, just killing them. And Daredevil, he's more like Batman, where it's like no, you beat him up, you cripple him, but you don't kill him, you put him in jail. And they have like this argument on this roof of which is morally more righteous. And Daredevil is a Catholic, being like, you can't be the guy that decides life and death. And Punisher being like, who are you to tell me? Like you put these guys in jail, they're out a week later, and they do the exact same thing. Like who's to blame at that point? Like what I do is permanent. Daredevil being like, no, what you do is wrong. Like what you need to do is dress up as the devil, just beat these guys up and cripple them. And Punisher puts them in the ground. They have this whole episode that's an hour-long conversation on the roof, and man, it is good. It's one of the best episodes. There's almost no action in this episode except when Punisher kicks Daredevil's ass. But the whole episode is just a conversation of who is more morally just in this unmoral world that they're both living in.
that's a tricky question to ask.
Yeah.
I mean, just in general, I watched, and not to just keep going further into this, but over the weekend I watched a movie called Juror Number 2.
I've heard good things about that movie.
Clint Eastwood film. And yeah, it's pretty good. I was actually really entertained by it, but also fascinated with it. And it explores, like justice and to a degree mercy, and when moral dilemmas kind of get in the way of that, and where's the justice in certain situations and scenarios that are out of people's control, with good people in bad circumstances and situations, which I guess is kind of a nice segue into Arcane.
Yeah.
Particularly with one of the main characters, Jinx, who is someone that has the best intentions, started out with the best intentions, always just wanted to do, wanted to help out, wanted to participate, wanted to be a part of the team and help, but was always in the wrong place at the wrong time, and her actions unfortunately made a lot of wrong consequences.
That is a good segue. Let's go there and stay tuned for our Daredevil episode, because I think I convinced Sam that we're in. But okay, so Arcane, I have a special spot in my heart for Arcane, because I feel like Arcane was kind of the birth of this podcast. For the story, I think me and Sam had both wanted to start something like this for a while, and we were meeting up for lunch one day, and I kept asking Sam when he's going to get his tattoo. No, you're good. And he's had this idea. I don't know if I'm allowed to tell you on the podcast or not.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, whatever.
Okay, so he's had this plan to get a tattoo that he's drawing himself. It has a lot to do with like just who Sam is. It's a very beautiful tattoo, and he was telling me about it. And I was pressuring him, like, when are you going to get the tattoo? I was some peer pressure. And he was like, well, I want to incorporate this character in it named Jinx. And I was like, really? Like who, this person, this character that you incorporate this into like something you're going to put on your body? And he was like, yeah. After that, he proceeded to tell me about Jinx and the series Arcane. And I've heard about this series for a long time because the reviews on it are just crazy. Like Rotten Tomatoes gives it great reviews. IGN, which IGN's really weird with their reviews, where they'll give really good reviews, just total garbage projects. But 10 out of 10 for Arcane. And I was like, I've heard about this series, and it's always on my Netflix like recommended list, but it usually takes a lot for me to get into a new anime. And Sam was like, bro, you gotta watch it. And he described the character of Jinx to me in a way where I was like, shit, let's start a podcast and I'm gonna watch Arcane and we're gonna talk about it. And that proceeded to me watching Arcane and get to enjoy it. But I don't think I would have watched it if you hadn't described how the character of Jinx was so impactful to you that you were having thoughts about putting her, something that represents her, on your body.
Yeah, yeah. I related to Jinx on an emotional level way beyond I ever thought I would or could. And every time I was in a new episode with a new experience with Jinx, I was like, "Fuck, that's me." To a degree, there's certain parts of her that are not, but as with any character, right, or person or thing that we kind of like are drawn into. But yeah, I was just enveloped by Jinx, and I related so much to Jinx, and I felt like Jinx was so misunderstood her whole life, and to a degree, I feel I have felt that for like not so much anymore, but growing up a lot. In fact, I was just thinking as I was parking to come in here, I was just thinking, you know, I used to pray all the time to God. Every single prayer almost always ended with like, please help me not screw up my life. And I don't know why I would ask that, but I always felt like I was screwing up my life, always. And I was just like, God, please have mercy on me. Don't let me screw up my life with whatever it was. And I think like that's the biggest desire in Jinx's heart is she just doesn't want to screw up. But she just screws up. And it's just the same thing over and over and over. Best intentions, tries to change, wants to change, and then she just screws up, right? Anyways, I stopped praying for that like a few years ago. And it's interesting in that I feel as if when I stopped praying for that, it was like I took control over my life, I guess, so to speak. And in a way, Jinx's journey is she's trying to have control over herself, over her mind, over her emotions, over her environment. And which spawned me to like another question that I didn't think about actually until I was driving home from our lunch. And it's not to jump ahead, but the spoilers was like, did Jinx die?
Yeah.
Am I right? My answer before was no, and my answer now is yes. Jinx is dead, and we'll talk about that later.
Okay.
So, anyways, I mean, so Jinx for me, she's just this complex character, and not only that I relate with, but I think everybody actually probably relates with Jinx one way or another, and probably other characters they will relate with more, maybe Vi, her sister, but I don't know. I can't help but think there's a bit of a Jinx in all of us, and originally known as Powder,
Yeah.
and became Jinx because she was a Jinx to everything she did, like to every situation or scenario.
Well, I think in season 1, I mean, when you first go into this world, I was a little confused, but you get used to it where there's like these animal creatures, these people, and there's like 2 levels of like this city. There's the really wealthy, there's the really technological advanced top half of the city, and then there's kind of like the underground graffiti raiding fighting to survive underground part of the city. And you're introduced to Powder, I guess, in this moment as someone that they're robbing this house or looking to get some kind of treasure to sell on the underground to survive. And things just, she's just this little kid, she's just like this little girl, and things go bad, and you feel for her, I think that's the opening scene of the thing. And I remember I was texting you, and I was like, man, they just blew up that house. Like, what are they doing? Like, why did she throw that bomb or anything? And she's just trying to help. And I think the conversation between Jinx and Powder as well is, and this goes into like a lot of our work in the anti-human trafficking sphere, is that a lot of our kids have been called ugly, stupid, prostitutes, all these different things by a lot of different people their whole life, and at some point, these internal factors they learn to accept. They accept what they're being called, and that's the identity that they embrace. And I just really feel bad that Jinx's inner circle, Powder's inner circle at this time, they called her Jinx even back then, where they planted those seeds to where when push came to shove and she had to choose one of her identities, she chose Jinx because everybody that she cared about on the external side, except for V and her dad, called her not by her real name, but by the worst trait about her.
Yeah, and in that heartbreaking moment in episode 3, I think it was in season 1, when
She kills all her friends.
she goes to help and finally gets up her, and she's been trying to get all of her little inventions to work, right? And finally the inventions work, and it's a great tool that actually potentially will help, but it's at the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong circumstances, and catastrophe happens, right? And it's so heartbreaking, like when why is their dad's name
What's his
it's
name?
not Silco, but
No, Silco's the drug dealer.
Silco and
What is his name?
oh wow,
Now we have to look it up. It's like Victor or something?
no, Victor is the scientist.
Okay. His name is... Dad name.
My gosh. Vander.
Vander.
Yes. So Vander. So when Vander is essentially dying, his last words to V is like, take care of Jinx, right? Like, I forget the exact words, but it was essentially like, don't lose sight of Jinx. Like, protect her, help her, take care of her. And she's in so much pain that when Jinx comes around, she just wants nothing to do with her, right? And so then there is Jinx left in the aftermath of what just happened with nothing but feelings of guilt, and I'm sure like self-loathing and hatred and confusion
and acceptance of everything that they're calling her is what she is.
And then she's this fine, like the reverse of what Logan says to Lara, like, don't be what they made you. And she's like, I'm gonna be exactly what they made me. And Jinx is just Jinx. Powder is just someone that is trying to fit in and find where they belong. Right? They need a community. They want a community, which so much of us do. We want an identity of something. We want to belong somewhere. We want to belong with people or places or bigger ideas, like we long to be attached to those things, and Powder's no different, but they grew up in this mixed up world with this top and bottom side thing and this war where there was all this death that happened, and now they live on the bottom side, and Vander's trying to do his best to take care of him, right? But they don't know any different. All they know is this world that they live in, and they're fighting to survive. So Jinx is nothing more than a product of survival, and she's hated for it again. And I don't know, like, I just had so much empathy for Jinx, and I think the biggest thing I related with is all of the voices in her head. I don't know how many voices in my head I struggled with growing up. Like, it was my own voice. I mean, it was a singular voice, but it seemed to have multiple identities that were constantly intruding and coming in and just like making me doubt some of the real voices that I would hear, or doubt my own inner potential or being, right? Like, it was just this constant conflict of these narratives circling in my head of what's happening, why it's happening, it's my fault, blah, 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 blah. So for me, Jinx's journey of, and I will say from powder to powder, with Jinx in the middle, is a journey I think all of us actually undergo. And V has her own journey as well, and people might relate with that. I mean, there's also Caitlyn, there's Victor, there's Vander, there's Silco, there's
A lot of characters.
Echo,
in
a lot of
series.
these incredible characters that are intertwined with one another, right? But I would say the main character in Arcane is Jinx. She's the lead. This is her narrative point of view, and we start with her and we end with her, and it's this journey of transformation, and there's so much about her that's so complex and confusing and challenging, and yet there is such goodness in her. I'm gonna go.
He's already getting started.
I'm
He's
already
already
getting
getting started.
started.
We're not even
Man.
we're going for a bit, but
Just the moment. I mean, there's two moments I remember most in this show with Jinx, and it's one when she is in the caves looking for Vander with
her little mini me.
her little mini me, right?
Yeah,
her
yeah.
her little surrogate child, so
Yeah.
to speak, right? And they come across Vander as the beast, and she's in the dark, and she just has a lighter, right?
Yes.
And there's just enough light that is leading her along, right? And I thought that this was just a beautiful representation of, right, we're always looking for the light at the end of the tunnel, but sometimes it's just the light that's in the tunnel that is enough to move us forward. And she just has this lighter, and that's the thing that is just leading her along in the complete darkness, because she's lost. And they come across, fuck. Why?
It's Jinx, bro.
Why?
Code.
V and Vander, and V turns to him, and because she's hugging him, and they've been looking for him for all this time. They thought he was dead, and she says, like, "What are you waiting for? He's your father too. Like, come and be held." And she just has like this dumbfound like expression and loss of words and overcome with emotion, and then she just runs to embrace and be embraced, and it's just this incredible healing moment, I think, in her journey, in V's journey, in Vander's journey, but in all of like the human condition, like as the human condition in all of our own journeys, like to come to a place where we can finally be embraced and embrace one another and ourselves for who and what we are, regardless of what we've done or regardless of what the future might be. It's just right here, right now, we're good enough to hold each other. And it's just this beautiful moment. And then the second moment is, and I can't believe I'm forgetting her name, but the little girl,
The mini-me.
the mini-me that comes into Jinx's life that then changes everything for Jinx.
Yeah.
It's a shift for Jinx. Someone has come along.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's the moment when there's two moments with her. There's moments when she's getting taken away and ripped away from Jinx. And she says nothing this entire series. She has no words. Except for in that moment. Except for in that moment, as she's being ripped away, she has no family, she has nothing, right? She's just this abandoned orphan. And she's being ripped away and she has her arms reached out and she says, "Mama." Oh, fuck.
That's awesome, bro.
Man, I don't know why that's hit me, but it's just it is so what Jinx needs. It's the one thing Jinx needs, and now Jinx can offer, right? And it's like this love, and it's this protection, and it's this place of belonging and identity. And then the moment when she sacrifices herself to save Jinx and everyone else. And Jinx has to just watch and let it happen. And it's the silver lining that Jinx has needed this whole time. And now that gets removed from her. Right? It's this why can't Jinx get a break?
Yeah.
You know?
Like even when she loves somebody, things still go wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and it's like going back to Logan, like, I didn't ask for this shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people I care about get hurt. And it just is this repeating cycle and cycle and cycle. So anyways, there's a lot, like Jinx is a complex character that just needs love and wants to love. And I think that's like this beauty is like love is like true love and self-acceptance and belonging is so gray. It's so messy. There's so many factors. And you never know who around you in your day-to-day is like Jinx. And I don't know, it's kind of a humbling and a grounding reminder of like, yeah, man, maybe you run into someone and they're like just fucking crazy or
quirky.
Or quirky or weird or different, and they do these dumb things or odd things, and it's like they're just trying to get by.
Yeah, just trying to survive another day.
They're just trying to survive.
And they're trying to find acceptance. Like you're describing Powder, like you can just she's like the annoying little sister that just wants to be part of your friend group. That's all she wants. She just wants to hang out with the cool kids. She just wants to be accepted, but she has these quirks that, and unfortunately her quirk is deadly, but she's just quirky. And I think it's just a good like lesson of, just people that grow up, like so many people that I know that I grew up with, they did everything that they could to not stand out and to fit in with the crowd until they were 19, 20. And then just the world flips where you do everything that you can to stand out, to be different, to be unique. But growing up, like, unique is not accepted. It's frowned upon almost. And you get bullied because of it. And Jinx, like, Powder was bullied. Like, her friends, like, I know that she ended up killing them, but they were bullies. Like, who calls, like, this little 9-year-old girl Jinx? And I'm not saying they deserve to die. But, like, she had these two realities that she's fighting with. I want to be the Powder that's helpful and accepted, or I have this reality that I don't want to accept, that I'm this this evil troublemaker kid named Jinx, and when that moment happens, we were talking about where she kills all of her friends, she embraces Jinx. And V, like, to her credit, like, she does lose control and get after Jinx when she realizes what had happened. But then, I mean, not 15 minutes later, she's just so regretful about what she did, but she never gets the chance to tell Jinx that.
Yeah.
But Jinx is left with that feeling of knowing even my own sister in the end, like, didn't want me. And I would say if there was one flaw this series had, if there's one flaw, I'd say it's the same flaw that Rings of Power has, where there's just so many characters. And everybody has your own backstory. You're trying to, like, follow, like, okay, he's the scientist. Okay, this little rat person guy, he's very wise. There's the rebel. There's Vander. There's Silco. There's the Black Panther lady that comes in, who I think is the real villain of the story. And you're just trying to follow these characters, but by far the most interesting were Jinx and her sister. I think those two are at the key of, like, this story. And I love Jinx, but I also love her sister too. I think her sister is so genuine, and you can just see the guilt on her every step of the way for, like, what's happening, who Jinx has become. You can just see the guilt on Vi. What's her
V.
V's,
Violet. V.
Violet's. Let's call her Violet. On Violet's face the whole time. And it's interesting, when I first went to therapy, I learned a lot about guilt, especially, like, self-guilt, where, when I was getting into this series after you'd already watched it, and you told me that you resonated a lot with the character Jinx, so much that you were going to put her something with her on your body. I was like, all right, I'm ready. Like, let's see what Sam's got in the story. The first 3 episodes, I was like, okay, she's a little kid, and she's making a lot of mistakes. Is that what he's resonating with? And then after that, she turned into a terrorist, where she's doing the bidding for Silco, and she's committing some really awful acts, and she's hurting a lot of people. And I was like, where is Sam going with this character? I'm like, this is, like, Jinx is the villain of this story. Like, maybe he likes this villain or whatever. And so you're watching it, and so I bring that back, just to bring it back to Violet, is the guilt that Violet has is not her fault. But her blaming herself, I think, makes her feel better that she has some kind of control on what happened. Because in reality, this whole thing is, like, there's a war that's bigger than them. Death comes to us all, whether we want it or not. Whether Jinx blew up that building or not, they were probably going to lose that fight and die anyway. But
And I'll just say, interject really quick, like, Jinx copes by hurting others, which in turn hurts herself. V copes by hurting herself, which in turn, like, just continues to hurt herself.
yeah, and her guilt, I think the guilt she's feeling is not real. I don't think it's a real thing that she's, like, she hadn't, like, what could she have done different in, like, Jinx's journey? Like, first off, she was incarcerated for most of Jinx's transformation into Jinx. V stuck up for her most, except for that one moment where, in a moment of just panic and grief and trauma, she lashed out at Jinx, is the only living thing that was still around. And then 15 minutes later, she repented of it and went back to try to find her and apologize. Like, what happened to Jinx, what happened from Powder converting to Jinx, was not V's fault. But V blames herself because it makes her feel as if she had some kind of control in what the outcome was. And failing to act versus the inability to act in the complete chaos is what a lot of people do, including myself, to make us feel better about this chaos that we're living in. When I first went to therapy, I was self-blaming a lot for things that had happened, and my therapist told me, you need to let this go because it's not real. Like, it doesn't make sense to cut yourself with an imaginary knife. Like, this guilt that you feel, it's for you to feel as if you can control an outcome of a situation when you can't. But feeling as if you could have makes you feel better than just living in complete chaos. And what these people are living in is just complete chaos.
Yeah.
So I think that V, her guilt the whole way, is just her trying to feel some kind of peace of the chaos that she's living in.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I love about the show is it deals with, like, these dualities, right? These dualities of human nature and the complex and the potential for good as well as the potential for bad. And with these dualities of potential and character, then there's, like, this dualities of realms that are all intertwined and connected. And I don't like multiverse shows. Like, there's a few of them that I'm like, okay, this works and it's great, but I think Marvel just took it and just went way too far with it. So I've just hated it.
Yeah.
I've just really hated this whole multiverse
There's just
thing.
a lot to keep up with, you know. It's just
But I really, really liked the multiverse aspect of this because they didn't really spend a whole lot of time on it. There was one episode really where it was like this exploration of what would these characters be like in another realm, another universe, right? And I loved the difference that it showed between Jinx and Powder, and if Powder would have grown up as Powder, you know, instead of growing up as Jinx, and the goodness and just the world that her world looked like, right? This difference, but it's this duality of character that all of us, we have the potential to do just as much as good as we do just as much of harm. Like, if we're capable of the highest amount of good, there is an equal side of us that is equal to that same amount of harm, and it's just whether we go there or not. And so there's just this duality and this constant battle and juggle of of facing your own inner demons, so to speak, and your own voices and your own issues, and not running from them or hiding them, but truly like embracing them and trying to figure out those things, you know. And one of the things that's fascinating to me is Jinx as a child, she has this short little hair, right? And then when we meet her as Jinx, she has this long blue ponytails, right? These long brands of hair, and it's all of these things that are like tied up, and it's just this long hair. And there's all these threads that is made up, and it's intertwined, and it's kind of like the fabric that makes up Jinx, and it's this long history of a lot of things that are just intertwined with one another. And she carries this throughout the film, or throughout the story, and then in the end of season 2, when she's finally in that prison cell, and her hair is all untangled, and it's just laid out, and like it's like this representative thing of like she's now seeing things for as they are, like not crisscrossed or confused with one another. Everything is now untied and laid out, and it just is draped over the entire like prison cellar floor. And it's just this really interesting and beautiful visual that of her hair untied, of it being undone, that she now finally like is untied and unraveled, right? And then she cuts her hair and she has short hair again. And there's just this visual transformation that happens, as well as the inner transformation that happens. And I think for me, like my hair has kind of been like that to a degree, where I've had short hair and then I had a dream to grow out my hair, and it was like so profound and prolific, and I didn't really understand it, and still like learning what that could be or why or whatever. And I grew out my hair, and then I had really long hair, and then I cut my hair, and I was like, oh, it's time for a change. Like this was this growth and identity, time for change, and I think it was good. But then at the same time, I like when I cut my hair, there was like all this shifts of things that happened in my life, and I felt like I started going back down into like an old version of myself that I didn't want to go back to. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to regrow out my hair and like process this. Like this is my way of processing this. And my hair's growing. And this time, the last time when I grew my hair out, like I just grew it out. I didn't trim it. I didn't like maintain it. It was just, I cut my hair really short one time, and then I let it grow literally for 4.5 years, did nothing to it. And now I've like tried to like,
Style it.
not style it, but just like take care of it.
Yeah.
You know, trim it, layers, whatever,
Yeah.
like maintain it, I suppose.
Well, it's something you can control.
Control, right? And and then I've been going back and forth. I'm like, oh, is it time for me to cut my hair again? Like, I really would like to, and there's a part of me that's like, no, like, you need to still keep growing it out and keep, you know. And anyways, I just like, here's something that I also am relating with Jinx that is just like an interesting connection, you know.
Yeah.
And it's a physical thing that kind of stood in place for this idea of figuring out your identity.
Yeah, they did that really well, like in the series, like when Jinx sits in the Jinx chair versus the powder chair, like you see that she's accepting like her character is Jinx. There's a scene where you talked about with the lighter. She actually used that lighter in season 1 as well to confront her sister, to shoot Silco, and then puts out the lighter before she takes Jinx's chair, almost signaling the exact opposite of what you described. Of like, that light you saw, that powder you saw, she's dead. It's just Jinx now. The characters that you described, like throughout this whole series, of us all having like, even like the characters of life, all you have these high highs and these lows. Every single one of us, everybody listening to the show, you and I, we're all the heroes of somebody's story, but we're also the villains of somebody's story as well.
Yeah.
And this is such a good example of this because the series, I could not figure out who the bad guy was. Because obviously it's Silco, the guy with the fake eye, who's getting people addicted, who's exploiting Jinx. I'm like, this guy's the villain, but he's incredibly kind to Jinx. Like everybody else, I would argue that Silco is nicer to Jinx than any of her friends were that she killed. I'd say he's nicer, which I'm like, okay, well maybe he's not that bad. Obviously Jinx, first season, I was like, this lady's a terrorist. I'm not sure why Sam is identifying so much with her until season 2, which I have something to say about season 2 and Jinx in season 2 in a second, but where she becomes a different version of Jinx. Still Jinx, still retains the best parts about her and some of the bad, but becomes just a different Jinx.
Yeah.
The handsome guy, I can't do all the names. The guy that becomes like president for a bit, it's like
Victor.
The scientist, Victor. So he seems like a great guy until he was wanting to become like an authoritarian.
Oh, no, that's not Victor.
Which one is Victor?
Victor is like, he's sort of like the Christ-like figure.
What does he look like? Oh, the guy, the limp?
Yes.
Okay, so again, I thought he was the villain too because he accepted all that power. I was like, oh, he's going to wipe this whole place out. Victor's scientist partner.
Yes.
That guy, I thought he seemed like a really nice guy. It seemed like he cared a lot about the underworld. And then there's like a point in the season where he kind of becomes like an authoritarian dictator, where he's looking to lock people up and invade the underworld.
Keep talking. I'm just making sure audio's going.
And then even like V, we still go with audio.
Yep, we're good. Yep.
With V, like she has a point too where she's kind of her girlfriend. I'm like, is she on V's side? Is she on Jinx's side? Is she going to stab Jinx in the back? Is she going to be the one that killed Jinx? Yes. I can't figure her out.
You've seen that meme? I watch Arcane for the plot.
Oh, yeah.
The plot is Caitlyn.
Yeah, I saw it too. Yeah, she's very attractive, that main character. And then, so you have all these characters, and then you have the congresswoman's mother that comes in. It's just like this bloodthirsty warlord that wants power, and I'm like, okay, yeah, she's the villain. But then again, some of her points of view should describe it like, well, it's better to be safe than sorry. Better, if we're talking about affirmative action here, like we have these weapons. Jinx is making very similar weapons just on her own. And she already seen what she did to this bridge. She killed all these people. She's making things with a box of scraps like Tony Stark. The preemptive action where it's like, we hit them, we hit her before she hits us. So I think in the end, I think she'd be the closest thing to a villain the series has. But every one of these characters has some really good moral traits about them. And then some traits where you're just like, it kind of flips. Like the very next episode where I'm like, okay, this is our heroes. Oh, no, our heroes turn into like maybe anti-heroes. And then one episode later, like, oh no, these are the villains of this story. So I think that's the way you described it. Just everybody's in the series like ups and downs that they go through. And I want to close my thoughts with Jinx again, where it's interesting that because I don't believe that there is an assault on masculinity. I believe that there is an assault on toxic masculinity. I think there's a big difference between toxic masculinity and masculinity. I think masculinity is something to be celebrated. I think it's something to be lifted up. And I see it portrayed well in media, especially when it comes to daddy-daughter relationships, where the lack of, maybe not the lack of, that's not the right word, but when a girl loses her dad, what becomes of her? And I want to use 4 examples just while we're sitting here, the stuff that we've already talked about. One is Jinx. When she loses Vander, she latches on to a dad who is nice to her, question mark, but exploits her for his own personal gain in Silco. But she's looking for that father figure.
I do think, though, Silco loves her.
Oh, he definitely does. He does. But I also think he definitely exploits her too, and he's got his own ideas in place, and she is a tool, but he is a tool that he loves. And he shows that. That's why he's such a confusing character, at least he was in the middle of the season, where he's a warlord, he's getting people addicted, he's doing weird experiments on people, but he is, at this point in the story, no one has been nicer to Jinx than Silco.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Well, and I think like Silco is to Jinx as Vander is to V.
Yeah.
It's like these characters are almost identical to one another, and they both have, because Silco and Vander, like their brother relationship is very similar to V and Jinx, right? But I don't think like that they're evil. Anyways, I just wanted to interject that.
No, and that's a good point. I'll give you 5 examples then. With Vander and V, what V does after she loses Vander, what Jinx does, let's even put it this way. When V loses Silco, the actions that she takes. What are the actions that Abby takes when Abby's father is taken from her in The Last of Us? Pretty drastic actions. It's just a little girl looking for a dad, looking for a girl to fill the hole that her father left or avenge that pain that she already feels. Ellie Joel. Spoilers if you've got this far, but Joel dies. Joel dies in The Last of Us, and Ellie does some...
It's not a simple death.
No. And Ellie does some really horrific shit to avenge the death of her father. And then let's even talk about, like, a few weeks ago we talked about Logan, where X-23 and Logan, she fills that hole. Was she always trying to fill that hole with him? Like, I don't know, but it's another little girl that needs her dad. And I feel it's being portrayed really good in media for a couple reasons. Is that type of masculinity should be celebrated. Like, I think Vander is a great example of positive masculinity. He's protective, he's supportive, he provides as best as he can. And it's it's being shown like what happens when those figures aren't there. And I think that this was just another beautiful portrayal of that, both with V that you just brought up that I hadn't even thought of, but then with Jinx as well, when she loses both Vander and when she loses Silco.
Yeah. Yeah, man, and it's just like, the series just, I think, highlights and showcases just the messiness of life. And it's not what it seems. There are things that are happening out of our own control and our own worlds that are affecting other worlds, or other people's own little worlds are affecting our worlds, right? Like, it's just messy. It's not black and white. Like, it is so gray, and we're just all trying to do the best that we can. We're just trying to figure the shit out because it's messy, right? And there are actions and things that people do or organizations do. I mean, you look at Piltover City, right, and then the Undercity, right? They are lit. It's the same city. It's just
Just two different worlds.
it's just two different worlds, right? It is like a mirrored reflection of the good and the bad that could exist within this civilization, and that's it. And it's people then like drawing a line and allowing people to either like preventing people from coming or going to one direction to like changing and living another life, or interacting with one another, like constantly trying to create barriers to prevent like people from being able to change or to live in a different way or environment. Like it's just a super
It's an
messy thing.
But it's an awesome representation because I shit you not. I'll talk to people sometimes and I'm like, how the fuck do you and I live on the same planet? Like we've had just vastly different experiences. And like some of the guests that we'll have on the show over the next few months, like these people, you sit down with them, you're like, how do I have these same experiences with these people? Because their experience is just so vastly different than what I'm used to. Of even like in this city, right? Like you have this city where the rich guy, he's studying at the best universities. He's getting put on the council. He's in great shape. You can just tell that he has access to the best medical care in the whole, what's the upper city called?
Piltover?
Piltover. Versus like V, who's probably his same age, who's robbing the rich so she can feed her family. Just these vastly different experiences. And I can tell you, we talked about this over dinner when it comes to like Jinx and like her journey. Because for the life of me, I was like, damn, this girl is a terrorist. Like, I don't know why you're idolizing her so much. And at the end of season 1, like, she throws that bomb and kills all those people. And then season 2, she has these 2 moments that I want to talk about where I think are really transformational for her character. For one is that she helps that little
Isha.
Isha? You found her. Okay, Isha. So Isha, she finds her, and you and I have talked about this, of just how transformative it is for someone when they finally are caring for somebody.
Yeah.
Like, she finds little mini-me, and, like, at first she's not super impressed. She's like, hey, like, okay, like, get out of here now, like, go back to whatever, and just didn't. She just stuck with them. And so this little mini-me, Isha, is that her name? Isha.
I-S-H-A.
Goes with Jinx because Jinx becomes like this character of the revolution, right? She becomes a symbol. She becomes like, when people, it's like the Dark Knight Rises and people are putting Batman's little symbol on the wall. Batman's not there. He hasn't been there for a long time, but people still believe in that symbol. Jinx becomes like this unofficial symbol of rebellion. And Jinx doesn't even want to be a part of this. She's like, I don't know what the F you guys want from me. Like, I just blew up a bridge. These guys just pissed me off. I'm not some kind of symbol for revolution. And then the Nazis, they make the mistake of kidnapping all these supporters of Jinx, but also Isha, little mini-me. And Jinx, this is the only person in the world that Jinx cares for at this point. And she's like, oh, no, you ain't fucking taking my little mini-me. So she goes to this prison, she cleans house, she rescues this little mini-me, and she rescues all these supporters of hers. But she's only really there for Isha, right? And all these people thank her. They hug her. They say thank you to her. And Jinx, you can tell, first she's like, hey, don't touch me. But then she starts to embrace of like, oh, this is my hero moment. This is what it feels like to be loved and appreciated. These people view me as Isha's always viewed me, as a hero, as a revolutionary, as a protector, as a supporter. And you can see Jinx's whole attitude from that moment start to change, where it's her hero moment. It's this moment which I think we all have, where these opportunities are presented to us, where we have a chance to just rise up or rise down. And this moment was kind of thrust on Jinx, and she wasn't seeking it out. She was just seeking to care for the one person that she cared about. And because she did that, she became a hero. And the whole series transformed from that point where she's like, I like what this feels like. I like what I just did. This feels good. I can, like I talked about the 2 different Jinx, like I can be Jinx the terrorist, or I can be Jinx, the symbol of freedom, the symbol of revolution, and be Jinx, the hero that I always thought I could be, but I just needed this one opportunity, and I kind of fell into it selfishly, and I unintentionally became this hero.
Yeah.
That's my favorite part of that whole show. There's two parts of that show I really like. That where she realizes that she can be a hero, and then that final fight when she pulls it on that freaking the hot air balloon, like that entrance is one of the coldest entrances I've ever seen in like a final fight episode, a series finale, whatever you want to call it. The way she pulls in on that thing, I'm just like, Jinx is here. Like the warlord, she's finished. All these people that like are taking over this city, it's done because Jinx, the revolutionary, Jinx the symbol, and Jinx the hero showed up, and she's pissed. And I still get chills even just thinking about
Dude,
it.
yeah. And there's just so much energy that's brought up in that, right? And I think it's a beautiful representation of we don't have to be the characters that everyone else thinks we are. We can be our own character. We can step into our own shoes and be the hero that we want to be and know that we're capable of being. And sometimes that is going to look different. I mean, for Jinx, it's an entrance, right? Like you hear this noise, and it's like, what is this ruckus, right? And then there's this close-up shot of her foot.
Yep.
And she's
And you
just,
know whose foot it is.
and you know his foot, and she's doing, and like the song is just like, the lyrics are like, I just want to blow shit up.
Yep. And it's probably what she's thinking right now. She's coming in to fuck shit up.
Yeah.
That's what she's coming in to do.
Yeah, and her hair's cut, and she's just like, I'm here, and we're gonna blow shit up, and this is gonna save the city, right? Mm-hmm. And we're just gonna do it in the only way I know how to do it, and that's like me.
Yep.
And she finally accepts and embraces like her for her, whether she's gonna mess it up or not. She's not worried about that anymore. She's just going, I'm here, and I'm here at the right time.
Yep.
It's not the wrong time. It's not the wrong place. It's the right time at the right place, and it's the right person.
Yep.
And that shit just gives me chills.
Oh man, and you're so right. Like when Jinx showed up at the end, when she showed up at the end of season 1, you're like, fuck, Jinx is here. Like, what's she gonna do? Because she's a little bit jealous of like her sister and her girlfriend. She has that big gun. She's at this point, she's really unhinged, almost to like a Joker version, where it's like, I don't know what the next thing you're gonna do, and it's freaking me out. Where she's very comfortable in her own chaos, where it's like, oh, this seems fun. I'm gonna do this now because it's gonna be fun. It's gonna cause a lot of destruction. End of season 1, Jinx, I'm like, oh no, Jinx is on this bridge. Something bad's gonna happen. And the end of season 2, you're like, oh my gosh, thank God that Jinx is here, because our people were getting screwed by these people. And Jinx shows up, and she doesn't show up with a lot, like a hot air balloon and some of her inventions, but her presence alone, because she embraced herself of the not perfect Jinx. She still got the attitude. She still got the what's the phrase? The ready, fire, aim part of her. But she shows up as herself, as the hero she's always meant to be. And it was made all the difference. And not only did she bring some much needed firepower to that fight, but the way that she converts herself to the hero throughout these 2 seasons, when she shows up, you're just like, we're good now. We are good. Thank goodness that Jinx is here, because we're good. We're not sure what she's going to do. We're a little bit scared of what she's about to do, but she's here, and so we know this is going to end okay.
Yeah. And what does she do? She saves the city. She saves the people. And does this like erase all of the terrible and awful things that she has done up to this point? No. Is she trying to do that for the first time for the first time in her life up to this point? I think she is not trying to erase her past anymore. She's not trying to make up for what wrong was done. She's just trying to do the right thing because it's right now.
And I know we talked a lot about Jinx, but I want to go back to Vi for a minute.
Yeah. Well, that would be good to go into this.
Oh, perfect.
This
You got
letter too.
you got these props. But I'm just really I think Vi gives a great example on just how to love our people in this episode. You know, as we draw our close and you end, you know, as we always end. You know, Vi, V, you know, Violet, whatever you want to call her, she knew Powder, she protected Powder, and then she was gone, and Powder became Jinx. And even though she still called her Powder, it was a new, the same person, but this person had been transformed by their experiences, right? So I think that's just a really good example on just how to love our people, because throughout this whole series, I mean, Jinx does some amazing things and Jinx does some crazy stuff. And Violet sticks with her no matter what, knowing that the Powder that she loved when she was 6 years old, 7 years old, however old she is, she's probably not coming back. She's definitely not coming back, because she's a grown-ass woman. She's been through all these different things and she's been transformed. And I think of, I told you the story at lunch, but I'll just share it for the podcast, is a couple years ago, Sam and a friend of ours took me to lunch, and at lunch I got a phone call from a very, very special 12-year-old girl who's part of our foundation, who has a lot of similarities to Jinx, a lot of the same habits, a lot of the same characteristics. And Sam really connected with her in a way that this girl got sent home from a home that she was in and had to sleep on the ground or had to sleep with a family member because she didn't have her own bed. And Sam was generous enough to pay for her new bed, like $400, $500 to make sure this girl had her own little space, in her own little space, to just sleep alone. And as this specific little girl has grown, she's become very different. She goes by a different name. She looks very different. And we still love her all the same, knowing that this little girl, whose name is Hannah, will probably never be that same Hannah again. Throughout life, she's evolved, she's changed, now she's a new person, and we love her all the same. I don't think it's healthy for us as people to, when we love somebody, to love a version of them that no longer exists. Because people change, people evolve. It's beautiful that we all can age, that we can all can have these experiences, we can grow personally, professionally, and if we're stuck loving a person in the past, we're doing ourselves and this person a disfavor, because that person no longer exists. This person continues to evolve. And Violet, in this story, I just love how much she loves her sister despite how much her sister has changed. Powder, as Violet knows her, is never coming back. Jinx is the new Powder, Powder Jinx, whatever you want to call her, but it's the same person, just has had vastly different experiences that have led her to this moment, and Violet chooses to love her despite what she's done, despite the changes that's gone on, knowing that it's still her little sister. She's just evolved over time, and I think that's a great lesson for all of us as humans, to not be in love with someone when that version of that person no longer exists. Accept the changes, accept the growth, accept the evolution, because we all go through it. Yeah. And I want that same grace for me. When I change, when I evolve, when I go through things and I'm no longer the Tyler of 2020 or 2017 or 2010 or whatever, that I hope that people that love me continue to love me despite the changes that may come throughout time and the evolutions that come because of our experiences.
Yeah, and gives you the permission to do that freely, right? Not that anyone has the right to give or not give you permission, but human beings kind of wait for permission for whatever reason. So yeah, like I love that. Not preventing someone from becoming who they can be and holding them back to what they used to be, which is all of the characters in this film. Like one of the things that I just love so much about Arcane is how detailed, and how many little things that are there that are interjected into the story that you don't know. Like, no, the majority of people are not going to notice this, but there are things that are happening that are representing the storytelling. And that's why I think I also just love this whole show, is how detailed the thoughts behind this show are, the little symbolism, the things that go in it that just transform it, that went into, I know, at least the part of why I have been so moved by it. And I think I think I was in the world of Arcane for 2 weeks after I finished. I mean, I just felt, I know it's weird to say this, but I just felt the weight of Arcane for like 2 full weeks. And eventually I just had to just cut it all out, because I was like, I am feeling too much. I am feeling too much. You know, even the soundtrack, I mean, I listened to the soundtrack on repeat for literally like 7 days, you know? But it was just all of these things, and there's all of these like beautiful quotes and liners and things throughout that are just so like impactful. You know, breaking the cycle, like don't get into the cycle. Like I have all of these like things that I've like screenshotted and taken pictures of, and
We'll share them. Let's hear them.
so you know, there's like these other multiverses, right, or whatever, and it's just kind of showing like in every other universe, these characters will love every version of that person, whether it's the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful. You know, at the core, it's still them, even though they like live in a different universe. But Victor, there's this thing with Victor that I just thought that I loved.
Victor's another one, the good one, where it's like, was he the villain or wasn't he? Like, he's another one of the characters that.
And he's there's a quote where he says, "Sometimes it's difficult even for me to understand what I've become, and harder still to remember what I once was." And Victor has been on this. I mean, his journey was was this transcendent journey, and good guy savior, bad guy savior, but he recognized. I mean, Victor is that character that you see in episode 1 of Arcane, of Jace, when he's traveling in the winter with his mom, and he says to him, he's like, in every version of this, you were the only one. Fuck. Oh man. I don't know. It's just so deep.
Yeah.
Silco has these things, and he says, we build our own prisons, bars forged of oaths, codes, commitments, walls of self-doubt and accepted limitation. We inhabit these cells, the identities, and call them us. And
oh my gosh.
And you know, you have these there's these prisons and these things throughout the series that they're locked into, right? Which are just like visual representations of this very thing, like oaths, codes, commitments, laws, you know, self-doubt, accepted limitation again, and then we inhabit these cells, these identities, and call them us. And so what are the things that really hold us back? And it's like, is that our own perceptions on things? Which I just thought was really nice. There's these beautiful moments and things where in frames where there's a shattered picture of Jinx and Isha, and the shatter on the glass is right on the heart location of Jinx, and it just like that little thing is Isha is the break in Jinx's heart, right? And there's just all these little details. Oftentimes, like when Jinx is close to death or in trouble, we see like smudged versions of her makeup, and it's in the shape of VI. whether it's backwards or upside down. But if you were to look at it, like V is always close to Jinx when she needs her most, which goes back to the story when V gives her that blue bomb and says, wherever you are, no matter what, if you fire this and you need me, I will be there, right? And it's just this visual representation of a promise made. There is, what's this other one? There's a sequence in season 2 that's animated like at 4 frames per second. And that refers to Echo's ability to step back in time 4 seconds with his machine, right? And it's just those little details, right? That no one's watching this going like, oh, are we feeling this, right? And like there's just all of these attention to details that are so specific, that are so meaningful, that move it forward. I think at the end of Arcane, there's another quote that says, like, perfection, and it's from Victor, and he says, perfection is nothing more than an end to pursuit. And I just have thought about that, like, a lot. And like, what is the end of pursuit? And if the prize of perfection is the end of pursuit, do I even want perfection? Because the pursuit, the journey, is what is so rich, right? Anyways, there's all of these things that I just love, which is why I bought this whole book, which just goes through and all of the little details of making the show. I mean, even like this is like the letter. This is the letter, and I think it's actually Vander's letter to Silco that he leaves him, but they have all of these little things that they've left in this. But this letter just says, I've looked everywhere, but it's clear you don't want to be found. God, I'm shit at this. I'm sorry. When she died, I lost my head. I told myself what I did to you was for the greater good, that you deserved it. But the dirt was on both our hands. Anyway, you know where to find me. Blisters and Bedrock, Vander. So,
That's awesome.
It's just like,
It's very genuine. It's very heartfelt, and it comes straight from exactly what he's feeling.
yeah. And so, anyways, part of why I relate with this again is there's this rebel side of me. It won't be in focus.
No.
But it says paint the town blue.
Paint the town blue.
You know, there is a side of me that most people, in fact, I would say most people don't know about me, and that is I was a very, very angry person, and I had a lot of hatred, and I wanted the world to burn. I felt like a lot of vengeful feelings, and it's been a challenge for me to forgive in my life when people fuck me over. And my natural response is I want to blow shit up. And like that's Jinx's natural response. Like I want to blow shit up. And I don't say that like you know,
Isn't that her?
this
What
is
she
not
does
a threat.
is a
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, but just that feeling of like destruction, and I want to tear down, right? And I've had to find a way to put the beast that's laying dormant in me to bed. And the fact that there's Vander, who is literally represented as this beast, and it's when he remembers who he is when that beast loses its power. And that's like in my own story of when I remember really the core of who I am is when that beast like starts to lose its appetite. And so I just am so drawn in by this, and It's just the stories I want to tell. It's the type of stories I want to tell. It's the type of details that are involved. And you just don't get this much intimacy in storytelling like you do in this show. So anyways, I even have like a loss of words to really express my love and appreciation for the film and how detailed it is, this TV show. So
I can tell you a fun fact. You want to hear a fun fact while we go? While we come to a close, is
I have one more detail actually, but yeah.
okay. The voice of V is the fiance of the greatest football player on the planet, Josh Allen. Did you know this? So Josh Allen
Maybe I did know that actually.
is the quarterback for the Buffalo Bills. They're playing this Sunday as of recording against the Kansas City Chiefs. Hopefully by the time this comes out, we're Super Bowl champs. But I went to college with Josh Allen at the University of Wyoming. And this year, he got engaged to Haley Seinfeld, who voices the voice of V. So obviously I consume a lot of her content now because she's Josh Allen's fiance. But there were, because like this show is great, so thank you for recommending it to me. But I don't know if it would have been, if I would have gotten to it as quickly if you hadn't told me the effect that it had and your desire to put a Jinx tattoo on you, because obviously with that it means it had such an effect on you that obviously I had to watch it too, because obviously you're someone I care about and I want to see you do well in life. And if this character had impacted you so much that you're going to get a tattoo of her, I had to see it. And the bonus was finding out Josh Allen's fiance voiced one of the main characters.
That's funny. That's funny. Well, Ella Purnell also voices the adult version of Jinx, and
It's awesome.
just incredible.
Why have you not put any of this up in your house, bro? That's cool.
It's like, I don't know. Maybe I will, but I just love that it's riddled throughout the book.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's like Jinx, Pilter wanted photo, like it's the one that's in the show. It's all of these details.
That's cool.
Where'd
you get this? Barnes and Noble?
I actually ordered it on Amazon.
Cool.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffrey Bezos.
Yeah,
it's just beautiful. I will say the last thing is my favorite band.
I don't know how we didn't talk about this already.
I know. So as a child, I can tell you the first music video I ever saw.
That's a good story.
The first band that I like remember listening to and just feeling at home.
Yeah.
Like
that feeling you just float.
Yeah, and I was, I don't even know how old I was.
2000.
2000, so 8 years old. I was 8 years old. And Linkin Park. Linkin Park is my favorite band, and they've been my favorite band since I can remember. Again, first album I ever bought, Hybrid Theory. And I've just followed their journey and evolution, and their identity has grown and developed so much over time. I've related in a lot of ways to the late lead singer Chester Bennington, who is now, the reins are now with Emily Armstrong, with Mike Shinoda, which I've actually really enjoyed their new album. And anyways, I say all this because I've always attached myself to Linkin Park. And every part of my life, when their album came out, it was like an answer to like the inner troublings of my mind and heart. And they've just always been like this safe place for me. Well, I never heard of Arcane season 1, but I did hear of season 2 just recently because it was coming out. But I heard it from my friend Skylar, and he was like, "Oh, have you seen or heard Arcane? It's amazing, blah blah blah." And he's like, "But have you heard the variation of Linkin Park's new song, Heavy to the Crown? Heavy is the Crown."
Heavy is the Crown.
And I was like, "No, but because Linkin Park, like, I'm all in, right? And like that was kind of the thing that drew me into this was Linkin Park and you know their version of Heavy is the Crown for season 2 episode 1. And anyways, I think in a lot of ways there's this journey with Linkin Park and me that also exists within Arcane, and the transformation and the identities and the development of them, of me, of Jinx and these characters. So there was this connection, and it seems to be like everywhere Linkin Park has gone, my life has tended to follow or connect with. And so this was kind of like another indication of like, oh yeah, this was in a way
For
made
you.
for me, right? And then I will go back to the details, right? The first frame of season 1 is that like Zeppelin thing flying into the city or out of the city, either one. And Jinx goes, one day I'm going to ride on one of those. And then season 2, the last frame of the last episode is a Zeppelin flying out of the city. And we had just experienced Jinx dying, right? And then I said, oh, well, is Jinx dead or not? And I was like, well, no, Jinx is not dead. And now I'm like, no, Jinx is dead, but Powder is still alive. There's the explosion at the end, and there's a brief frame, a moment, and there's a pink flash. And there's that escape that I believe Jinx escaped the explosion, went through the pipes of the Citadel, and is on that Zeppelin flying away, right? And finally letting go of being Jinx and being who she was at the core, which is Powder, but starting a new life as Powder. So is Jinx dead? Yeah, Jinx is dead. But is Powder still out there? I think so.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I remember I downloaded that version of the song too because I was watching it and you told me of this profound impact this show had on you. And then season 2, episode 1, they get the task force to hunt down Jinx, and this version plays of Heavy is the Crown. And I was humming along and I was like, I've never heard this song before. But I had, and I was like, of course this is, like, of course this show that Sam loves, he's going to get a tattoo with it. Of course it has some kind of Linkin Park embedded in it. I'm glad that I got to watch it as well. We recommend it to everybody. It's a great show. And, as we come, at the end of the show, but also the end of the series, I love series that know when to end.
Yes.
That know when to end. Like, it sucks. Like, this show is just 2 seasons long, and it sucks because you want more because it's that good. But as we've talked about on this podcast a number of different times, part of the journey is the end. And knowing when to end and how to end. Like, you see it. Like,
Otherwise, the stakes don't matter.
No, and like the longer that shows go on, like the stories just, they aren't, like, the stakes don't matter. The stories aren't the same. It just gets diluted. I think Walking Dead's a great example, and I actually enjoy The Walking Dead after Rick leaves. But the last couple of seasons are just kind of, you're just like, I'm just stuck with here because I've been 12 years in this already. Versus like shows like Breaking Bad. They're like, nope, we're going 5 seasons and then we're done. We already have an end date in mind. This is the end of this story. The Boys, which I love The Boys on Amazon Prime. They just announced that the upcoming season will be their last season. They could potentially get more money and more stuff out of it, but the integrity of the story and the quality of the story they're telling matters. And so they're like, end of season 5 and we're done. It's the end. Arcane had a story to tell. It took 2 seasons to tell, and then they were done. And I think that retained the quality of the product, even though I want more. And it's a great story, and I really enjoyed it. People should check it out on Netflix.
Yeah, highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite stories, super connected with. And if it's not Arcane, I hope that you find yours. And maybe mine is Arcane for a time, and then one's the next one that's going to come around that's going to resonate so much, right? And that's what I love about storytelling and inspirational stories, because at any given point in our life that could change depending on what's going on in our heads or our hearts, and or new perspectives, right? It's interesting, going back to like Linkin Park, right? I went and saw them like live like 4 times, and I went to like the Honor tribute concert to Chester. But I don't often go back and listen to Hybrid Theory because of the weight of my life at that time. And you know, there are things that help us, that move us along the way, and sometimes we don't need to go back to those, right? There are times when I just go to Hybrid Theory and I'm like, this is how I want to feel. And I just fully envelop it and embrace it, right? But I don't stay there for long. And I think that's just kind of, you know, this beautiful journey of life is navigating, finding that, and not keeping ourselves in the prisons of our minds. Kind of what Silco described in this series. So, yeah. So, anyways, thanks for listening to me get emotional.
Yeah, I think we have a new record for you. I think 3 times. I think Walter Mitty was once. I think your personal story was a couple different times. I think it's a new record. But obviously, it means that, you know, the series it just resonates with you, and I'm sure as the more stories we tell, the more movies we see, the more stuff that we see, the more people we talk to, the stories will continue to resonate.
Well, and this is why I wanted to do this, because I feel like I suck at trying to express my emotions, and then I just feel so strongly.
Shit, I suck.
And I suck at this, and I don't know what to say, and I don't know how to fucking say it.
Yeah.
But I feel deeply, and I know that, and I was like, maybe this podcast of trying to navigate my favorite films or these moments is going to help me fucking figure out how to get it out of my system in a way that's clear and that someone can understand without me like, but pause, but. It's really great, dude.
Yeah. You should check it out.
Yeah.
It's on Netflix.
I'm like, fuck.
Yeah.
Well, I can't even describe why I like this.
Yeah.
So, anyways, be sure to tell someone that you love them.
And check us out on Apple, Spotify, Patreon, YouTube. Subscribe to us on all those. It really helps us out. Helps get in the algorithm. Join us for the next couple of weeks. We got some awesome guests. We got some awesome things to talk about. We're going to start seeing movies again now that movie season's picking up. Give you a recap on Sundance, the movies we see at Sundance. And yeah, like I think, you know, just what you said at the end of that podcast is, you know, tell someone you love them. And Arcane, I think it makes that hit home just a little bit more, because there's moments in Arcane where people's story just ends with the little mini me, with Jinx, with Vander, and you just never know when the last time you're going to talk to somebody is, especially someone that matters to you. And so that person, yeah, make sure you tell them you love them.
Yeah.
Love you, Sam.
Love you, bro.
Oh, bro, it's a good fucking episode. Boom! Dang. I can't believe I had the Linkin Park thing. I can't believe I didn't write that down. I remember texting you about that. I was like, Jesus Christ, of course you like this show.